What? It's Halloween. God, it smells like feet. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by nerd teas and a desire to not do the entire episode while wearing that mask. And welcome to week 21, the final week of the CFL regular season for 2018. We've had some good times, we've had some bad times, we've had some ups, we've had some downs. You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have a CFL season. First of all, week 20. How did we do in week 20? We are back to our very successful ways with picking the games in the CFL this season. Week 20, 3-1 straight up, has us 49-28 straight up this season. That's a clip of 64%. We should be able to get that to 65, fingers crossed, with another good week this week. Against the spread, we swept them all. 4-0 against the spread. Cha-ching. We made us some money there. 44-33 against the spread this season. I'm all right with that. It's 57%, climbing towards where I would really like it to be. Over under, broke even. 2-2. That's pretty well been par for the course for us, especially in the latter part of the season. 40-35 with the two pushes over under. That has us 52% along with the two pushes. Overall, across all the CFL bets in week 20, we were 9-3, and that's a very familiar tune for us. 133-96 with the two pushes this season across all of the CFL picks. 57.58%. Would have liked it to be closer to 60, but we've still got the whole playoffs to go. So everything has shooken out in terms of the teams that are going to make the playoffs versus the teams that are not going to make the playoffs. Obviously, Toronto and Montreal in the East Division, they're only 4-13. Neither one of those two teams will be seeing postseason action. And the Edmonton Eskimos, and that has to be an incredible disappointment for Mike Riley and Eskimos fans. They will not be making the trip to the CFL postseason this year. They're going to finish, well, they're not finished, but right now they're at 8-9. They could win this week and get to 500, but it's not going to be good enough to get into the playoffs. So congratulations to our 6 playoff-bound teams. In the East, it's Ottawa and Hamilton. In the West, it's Calgary, Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, and BC. Some of you who may be less familiar with the CFL might be going, well, wait a minute. Why did 4 teams from the West make the playoffs while only 2 teams from the East made the playoffs? Good question, and we'll talk about it in a minute. First, let's take a look at our schedule for week 21. 4 games to close out the CFL regular season. We have Toronto traveling to Ottawa to take on the REDBLACKS. We've got Winnipeg in Edmonton to take on the aforementioned Eskimos. We've got Montreal in Hamilton to take on the Ticats. And we've got Calgary in BC to take on the Lions. You might notice I have my laptop open because I wanted to specifically point out the person that made this comment on the video last week. It's not a strict comment of the week, but it was a great question, and it obviously gave me the insight to sort of address this on the show this week. By the way, this is going to be a much shorter episode this week. So I want to shout out Poorboy102, who has been commenting on quite a few of the CFL videos and even some of the NFL videos so far this season. Been a great contributor, and thank you very much. Poor Boy asked, Justin, could you briefly explain the playoff scenarios for each game played in week 21? By the way, good show. Poor Boy, very rarely do I explain anything briefly, but I will do my best. First of all, I thought it would be prudent to explain for people that don't understand how the playoffs work in the CFL, just to explain the playoff format. Well, as I'm sure you were able to count, 6 teams make the playoffs in a 9-team league. And here's how we figure that out. You have each division. You have the East Division and you got the West Division. In those divisions, the top 2 teams make the playoffs automatically. In the East, of course, it was Ottawa and Hamilton. And in the West, it's Calgary and Saskatchewan, although we haven't figured out which one's 1 and which one's 2 yet. With those 2 teams, the number 1 seed gets a bye through the first round of the playoffs, goes all the way to their division final. So, we already know by the standings who's getting the bye in the East Division. That is the Ottawa REDBLACKS. They will not have to play next week. They get a bye all the way to the East Final. In the West, we don't know that yet. Right now, Saskatchewan, having played all of their games, they don't play this week, Saskatchewan will get that number 1 seed if Calgary does not win this week in BC. From there, the best number 3 seed, whether that is in the East or in the West, based on points, because just like the NHL, in the CFL, you win a game, you get 2 points. In this case, that was Winnipeg in the West Division, had more points, obviously, than Montreal, so Winnipeg is in. Then comes the complication, or not really complication, just it takes a little bit of explanation. Then comes the crossover rule. So the crossover rule is put in just to ensure that the playoffs are as capable as they could possibly be. What the crossover says is in the same division as that number 3 that is making the playoffs. So in this case, it's Winnipeg. In this case, it's the West. If the number 4 team in the West has more points than the number 3 team in the East, or vice versa, depending on the standings, but in our case this season, if West number 4 has more points than East number 3, in which case, in this instance, they do, that's BC, who has, I think, 18 points, and Montreal has 8, so it's not particularly close. If they've got more points, West number 4 will cross over into the East to take that spot of East number 3 just for the purposes of the playoffs. I hope I explained that right, and I hope I explained it well. I hope you understand what I mean. If you don't, hit me up in the comments section below. We can talk a little more about it. Hopefully I can clear things up for you. So essentially, heading into next week, the first week of the playoffs, here's what we know. The East semifinal will be the BC Lions, who are crossing over from the West, traveling to Hamilton to take on the Ticats. The Western semifinal, we know the Winnipeg Blue Bombers will be the road team in that game. They will travel to either Saskatchewan or Calgary, and that will depend entirely on whether Calgary wins this week. If Calgary wins, Winnipeg goes to Saskatchewan. If Calgary loses, Winnipeg goes to Calgary. We know that the East final will be the winner of that BC Hamilton game from the East semi. The winner of that game will travel to Ottawa to take on the REDBLACKS. And the West final will be some combination of Saskatchewan, Calgary, or Winnipeg, and it will be one traveling to the other. Nothing has really been decided there yet. I'm playing these picks this week very much based on motivation. Who's got motivation to win these games? Who doesn't have motivation to win these games? Who's going to be resting starters because it's the last week of the regular season? Who's not going to be resting starters because maybe they have a bye or what have you? But before we get into all that, I obviously had to take the time to pump the tires of my good friends at NerdTees. NerdTees.ca. Use that promo code BWFinest. It's going to save you 15% at checkout. Free shipping on any order over $50. If you're in the US, boom, boom, 2 clicks of a button. All of a sudden, everything's in US prices and you get a great conversion on the US dollar. Today's blend is cookie dough with a nice couple of shots of milk in it. Evens it out, makes it nice and creamy and delicious. Tastes just like cookie dough, smells just like cookie dough. It's fantastic. NerdTees.ca, promo code BWFinest, gonna save you 15%. Get the free shipping in Canada if you go over $50. Never been a better time to buy from NerdTees. With Christmas just around the corner, get some tea for a loved one, find yourself something to love, or, like I said, find someone you love something to love, and you can do that. NerdTees.ca. And if you don't, this guy might show up. So we'll start with that first game, Toronto at Ottawa. So Toronto is in a position where they do want to win this game because right now Toronto is still winless on the road. They are 0-8 this season. They want to win this game because no team wants to go winless in any situation, whether it's at home, certainly not at home. Ottawa's got nothing to play for in this game. They've already clinched the bye, but they've also got the bye. And basically I bring that up because there's not a lot of reason, or certainly there's much less reason than there are with some of these other teams, for Ottawa to rest starters. Because even if you only play your starters, say, the first half, and I realize you don't want to get any of your starters injured, especially not when, you know, you're going to be hosting a division final only 1 win away from the Grey Cup. You certainly don't want to get anybody injured. But You also don't want to put yourself in a situation where your starters have only played, 2 quarters of live round football in the last 2 weeks before you go into then having to play that one important playoff game before you get to the Grey Cup. So you still want your starters to probably have that full game worth of live rounds. So essentially, I don't see Ottawa resting their starters in this game. Maybe William Powell, because he's been a little banged up lately. But I don't see Ottawa resting their starters. And if Ottawa doesn't rest their starters, Toronto's not going to beat Ottawa in Ottawa. Therefore, I'm not taking Toronto to beat Ottawa in Ottawa, as I think their starters probably play the vast majority of the game, maybe the whole game. I'm going to take Ottawa here at home to beat Toronto. On the line, the Red Blacks are favored by a full touchdown at home, -7. So clearly, Vegas doesn't think Ottawa's going to be resting their starters either. Ottawa wants momentum. They want momentum heading into that bye week and heading into their playoff game in 2 weeks. I think Ottawa covers this number, so I'm going to take Ottawa minus the 7 points. Total in the game is set at 53.5 points, and I think I'm going to stick under on it. I personally capped this at a high 40, so somewhere like 47, 48, 49. That's under by more than a field goal. And there is, of course, the possibility that maybe Ottawa rests their starters, certainly if it's a blowout through the first half. Let's go under 53.5 points in Ottawa, Toronto. See, I told you this thing was going to be quicker. Let's go to Edmonton now. Blue Bombers in town to take on the Edmonton Eskimos, who, as I mentioned, will not be in the playoffs this season. Winnipeg has nothing to play for. They're already locked in as that West number 3 seed. They know they're going to be traveling to either Calgary or Saskatchewan, depending on how that plays out. And they're going to have to do that next week, so they don't have a bye week in there either. So Winnipeg's got nothing to play for. Edmonton, I would say, does. If nothing else, Edmonton's playing for pride. They want to finish at 500. I mean, they don't want to finish 8-10. Like, this is not a sub-500 team with the weapons and the players that they have on both sides of the football. It's not a sub-500 team. Winnipeg has nothing to play for. So, I mean, I think it's already been stated that Chris Streveler is going to start in this game. I don't think they're starting Matt Nichols. So certainly, with Streveler starting, Streveler's more than capable as a CFL quarterback. He's proven that this season, but as a starter, not quite as good as, bringing him in on those short yardage situations and bringing him in off the bench. So I think they're going to play it smart. I don't expect to see a lot of starters for a long period of time. Maybe the first drive or two, certainly not past the first quarter. Let's take the Eskimos at home to beat Winnipeg. On the line, the Eskimos are 5.5 point favorites at home. That's a little bit too much for me. I don't think a team that is going to be going to the playoffs has any interest in being blown out. Certainly not by like 2 possessions. So I actually think Winnipeg probably keeps this game fairly close. Probably if they have starters in, once they get a lead, which I'm sure they will in this game, the starters will probably head to the bench. But I think they probably still cover here. So we're going to hedge our bets. We're going to go Winnipeg plus the 5.5. Total in the game is set at 54.5 points. It is our biggest total of the week. I capped this somewhere right around a mid-50. And again, you got to account for the fact that Winnipeg's backups will probably be in this game. But with Chris Streveler as your backup quarterback, I mean, he can certainly move the ball and put points on the board. At the end of the day, this is just 2 really good offenses. I don't think Winnipeg's defense will be playing at 100% speed. I'll give it 80% this week because, you got that big important thing next week. So, whatever. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. So I think we go over on it. Let's go over 54.5 points in Winnipeg, Edmonton. Next up, Montreal traveling to Hamilton to take on the Ticats. This is a situation, once again, kind of like the previous game. Hamilton has nothing to play for. They're already locked into that number 2 seed in the East. They already know they're playing BC next week in Hamilton. Montreal does not want to finish dead last. And if they win this week, they can avoid finishing dead last. And it's weird, Montreal actually played a little bit better on the road this season than they did at home. Like, just watching some of their home games, it's like, wow, this doesn't look like the same team as it did, 2 weeks ago when they were in Hamilton or whatever. I actually kind of like the upset here. I think, Montreal playing for pride. They, want to finish as well as they possibly can. Johnny Manziel, assuming he plays in this game, wants to finish the season well, leave a good impression in the minds of the fans heading into next season, which apparently he's going to fulfill his obligation to Montreal next year, which is fantastic. I think Montreal wins this game. And I don't think the Ticats lose any momentum if they lose this game. So let's take the Alouettes on the road in Hamilton to beat the Ticats. On the line, Montreal is a 6-point dog on the road, Hamilton -6. That line, I think you hedge that one way or the other, especially considering we're probably going to see Hamilton backups for the vast majority of this game, especially with how riddled they've been with injuries, especially to their star players. Total in the game is 53 points. That's too high a total for me. I capped this somewhere at a mid to high 40. Hamilton backups probably for most of the game. I think you stay under on this one. Let's go under 53 points in Montreal-Hamilton. And then, the game that matters this week, Calgary in BC to take on the Lions. Magnified all the more by the fact that if you don't get that bye, not only do you have to play a game next week, you got to play Winnipeg next week. Winnipeg is no slouch here. I think Winnipeg could go all the way if I'm being brutally honest. So if you're Calgary, you know you want to force Saski to have to play that game. You don't want to have to play that game yourself because you don't want to have to exert all the effort it's going to take to try to get by Winnipeg. But you'd be very happy to sit back on your couch, watch the game, and watch those two teams beat the hell out of each other. So that's what Calgary's motivation is. And if you can't get motivated for that, you probably don't belong where you're at. Lions have been very, very good at home this season. They've been mediocre to average on the road, but as my good friend Millhouse Sports pointed out in conversation, they should have been better on the road than they were this season. There was the Jennings of it all, the bad Jennings of it all, few bad hops. They probably could have been over 500 on the road this season, as he pointed out. I think you could probably see some starter resting come into play here as well. I mean, if I was Wally Buono, that's certainly what I would do. I mean, you gotta like the Stamps in this game. I think if the Stamps don't win this, they're doing nothing in the playoffs. If the Stamps don't win this game, I don't think they get by Winnipeg next week. So let's take the Stamps to do that as the only playoff team with motivation here. We're going to take Calgary on the road in BC to beat the Lions. On the line, your guess is as good as mine. And this is what I tweeted this morning, and it's so nice to see. Vegas has given CFL all the legitimacy it needs because Vegas are being cowards on this Calgary BC line. There is nothing, not a spread, not a total, no props, nothing for this game right now. And when Vegas is being a coward about your lines, you know you've arrived. As per usual, I will update you in the comments section below when those lines and totals become available with what my picks are. There you go, folks. There are my picks for week 21 in the CFL, the final week of the regular season. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I've got Ottawa at home beating Toronto. I'm hammering Ottawa against the spread -7 in a game that stays under the 53.5 point total. I've got Edmonton at home beating Winnipeg, but I am hedging my bets there and taking the Blue Bombers plus the 5.5 against the spread in a game that goes over 54.5 points. I've got Montreal on the road upsetting the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Again, meaningless game for Hamilton. Montreal beats Hamilton in Hamilton. I like Montreal +6, obviously, against the spread in a game that stays under 53 points. And I like the Calgary Stampeders on the road in BC to beat the Lions. And on the line and the total, your guess is as good as mine. Ladies and gentlemen, the regular season of the CFL comes to a close this week. It has been a wonderful experience for me doing CFL this season. Obviously, it's not stopping because we got the playoffs just around the corner, but thank you. Thank you for those who have been watching. Thank you to the incredible community of people, especially through Twitter, that I found talking about CFL. Mill, TK, Smitty, Kong, just all the guys that are in that group chat and who have been incredible and insightful and everything this season to learn and to become better at this because I got the experience of knowing and meeting and talking to you guys. So thank you so much if you've been watching, if you're in that group chat, anything, you've been commenting, everything like that. It's been an awesome experience, and we will definitely be doing this again next season. No question about it. That's it for me. Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the great folks at Nerd Tees. Happy Halloween, of course, plus tomorrow, November 1st, I will be kicking off my Movember campaign. So I'll have a quick video for you in the morning about my Movember campaign, the link to my Movember page, raising money for men's health concerns, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, men's mental health. It's a cause that means a great deal to me. So I'll have a little video out about that tomorrow as well. Thank you so much and enjoy the last week of the CFL season.